Nina, you've probably had ear infections because you're a lemon.
Yeah, I did.
Our resident lemon, Nina.
Yeah. Getting denied by my disability or whatever it is, probably. Today is October 14th, 2021, and it is another busy morning at FemVet. We had a little bit of a different day. We tried to fit a few more surgeries in. Not that anything was rushed, but just trying to figure out how much team power we needed to be able to run as a well-oiled machine. So we started off the morning with a mature spay. Juno is loud. That's why she's first. It's usually how we decide who goes first. Today is a busy day.
It's nice to have more help. We're just trying to get our footing and make sure we have enough support staff to support the extra veterinarians.
My life is easier.
Yeah.
Just checking my pedicles to make sure they're not bleeding too much. Maybe bleeding a little bit more than I'd like. Damn it! We're almost done. There was a little bit more bleeding than normal, but I just went through my normal steps to try to make sure that all the bleeding was stopped. Checked my pedicles, made sure that there was no bleeding in the broad ligament, fixed it, tied off what needed to be tied off, and moved on. So sometimes there's just things that happen during surgery that aren't a big deal, but you don't really want them to happen. Like for your spay to go smoothly, you want all your knots to stay, all the vessels to be tied off, nothing to bleed. But sometimes as you pull things up, maybe a vessel tears a little bit further down so then it bleeds, or your ligature slips. So then that can, just stuff happens, things bleed. So you just always go and find everywhere you've tied and make sure things aren't bleeding excessively. But there's kind of a certain amount of blood that's okay and a certain amount of blood that's not okay. And as you get more experience, you'll learn how much bleeding is fine and then how much bleeding is not fine. So that's how I kind of just judge it, as I put my gauze in, pull it out, put my gauze in, pull it out, how much blood is pooling places. So that was the big clot that helped me kind of find where it was bleeding from. And then I just check everything again. Really make sure. And then I'll close. I would be really worried if this was a Chihuahua. This big dog, I'm not really that worried. It's more blood than I'd like to see, but it's not a ton of blood in terms of how much blood they can lose.
This is Mia. She woke up with some really smelly ears. So I'm just cleaning her ears now. We took a swab of both sides to look under the microscope. You can see she's got a lot of debris in there. We look at the ears under the microscope in order for us to determine what type of infection there is. So there can be different types of bacteria that can cause the infection, or there can also be yeast that causes the infection. So I'm just waiting for the slides to dry, and I'll go look at that. But right now I'm just giving her a gentle ear cleaning, getting all the goobers out of there. I know. It's weird feeling. It's very strange, isn't it? So that's just some ear cleaning solution. It just breaks down the oil in the ears, so we can get those big chunks out. In case we need to give ear medication, then we can get it down to where the skin is infected and it doesn't get all mucked up by the goobers. Ear infections are pretty common in lots of dogs. Sometimes they just happen. Sometimes it's due to them having really hairy ear canals or smaller ear canals or just their lifestyle. But a lot of times it's also related to allergies. So whether or not that's food allergies or environmental allergies, there's a lot of different reasons why they can get ear infections. In humans we typically get ear infections as kids, and then after that we don't get too many. Okay, let's clean the other one. There we go. Let's take a look. Yeah, that one's pretty good. Okay, let's go look at the microscope. We'll see what you got in there. All of those little dots, there and there and there. And there, that's yeast. And you can see right here, that's yeast budding. So that's how they replicate as they're cloning themselves. We did not see any bacteria in there. So it's just a straight yeast infection on both sides. So yeast, there is yeast that lives in the environment and yeast that also lives on our skin, and it typically doesn't cause a problem unless the barrier is broken down between the skin, how the skin protects itself from the outside environment. So usually we have inciting inflammation first, and then the yeast takes over as a secondary infection after that. Our top, I guess, cause typically in this clinic would be food allergy. So the food allergy makes the skin red and raw, and then that breaks down the epithelial layer, and that allows the yeast infection to take hold. But there is other reasons why yeast infections can start up. If we have just a single yeast infection just one time, we'll just treat it and not do any sort of management or changes with the animal. But if we have recurrent infections, then we have to make management changes, like changing the diet, changing the environment, potentially putting on allergy medication. But in this case, Mia's never had an ear infection before, so we'll just put her on an antifungal ear drop that also has some anti-inflammatory, and she'll be feeling better in no time, and that'll kill all the yeast. In most cases, they're completely normal within 5 days. I'll get her antifungals and we're good to go. Certified by Elanco.
There we go. Oh my goodness.
After that, we moved on to a small neuter. Nothing out of the ordinary.
It's a big surgery day. Too many of us squish things in.
But we were able to find enough support staff to make it work, and it's fine as long as I can look ahead and
Plan
make
for
a
it.
plan.
Yeah. The fastest dog neuter I did was 4 minutes. It was a peds though, so it's not really the same because you pretty much put a cruciate suture in it. But it's not a race, as my dad would say, all the time for everything. But it's less anesthetic time, which is good. Less time being under, less time being open.
Then we flipped over to another mature spay, and this one was much more normal or much less bloody.
Everyone kind of has a job, and while we're doing surgery, then the next animal's getting prepped, and then while someone's extubating this animal, we're getting the next animal into surgery. And just being more efficient with it. It's not changing any animal care, it's just making sure that we have someone available for each step versus having to utilize the same people over and over again for each step. Because this is a mature large dog spay, there's not a bunch of differences, but I'm just going to want to pay a lot of attention to all the vasculature. Because she's more developed and older, there's going to be more blood vessels. I know that there's going to be more bleeding, so I'm not going to be shocked by the amount of blood. There's just more fat to everything, more vessels. Even that, I just cut in the broad ligament. But this is just a vessel in the broad ligament. It's not even a big vessel. So just stuff like that with matures. Now I'll tie that off, but that's not surprising. And that's why typically there's an extra charge, is because they do take longer. There's more material used because we're having to put more ligatures places to stop bleeding. So there is an add-on charge because of that. And obviously also why we like spaying animals when they're less mature, because there's less bleeding associated with the surgery. So it's less risky for them. But I'm not worried about this at all. This is just normal bleeding with a female mature. And then I'm gonna check all my corners again. So there's none. That's how it's supposed to go. There, done. Quick mature spay. That was quick.
So we're doing just
preliminary x-rays, I guess. This is just a 7-month-old German Shepherd pup. Screening, like very basic screening for hip dysplasia. German Shepherds are prone to it. And there is a foundation that we can send radiographs to get them certified, and they would tell us how good or bad his hips are, but they can't certify puppies, so he's too young to have it done yet. So that's why I say it's preliminary. So he's only 7 months old. I think they have to be at least a year to do it. Anytime they're even crossed with any type of shepherd, they're usually more inclined to have something like a hip dysplasia.
Send them. Signal pet. And then decide if we'll send them away. So I would like someone else to maybe look at it.
Finally, we moved on to a cat dental. This cat had some resorptive lesions on one of its teeth.
So I just started cutting, so it's bleeding a little bit. But it is this tooth here. So see how that's pink there? So that's a resorptive lesion. They're really, really, really painful. Cats typically will she's anesthetized obviously, so normally they'll chatter, but they're really, really painful, so we want to remove them. It's just like the tooth essentially dissolving, so then all of the nerves that are in the tooth are exposed, and that's really ouchy. If you've ever had a toothache, this would be like the worst toothache ever. So once it's gone, it feels a ton better. So I just cut the gum and lifted it up. Where this is all bone there now, so I'll burr that, and then we'll split the tooth and then pull it out. Now that that bone's gone, sort of see that this is a double rooted tooth, so there's a root there and a root here. Root there, so I'm gonna drill right here and then split the tooth. And then I'm gonna try to elevate those. Cat teeth are just super flimsy, so I'm gonna try not to break the root, but I'm really strong, so. The tooth is dissolving, and then everything underneath the tooth is being exposed, or inside the tooth. So now I'm just gonna close that. So there's like sharp bone from where I removed teeth. So now I'll use my football burr. My favorite bit, because it's a football. I don't even really like football, but. So I just smooth out the bone so that it doesn't poke anywhere with the tiniest suture. 5/0. I think this one might be the only lesion, but there might be more.
Kind of looks like there is roots under there, but they're like ankylosed to the bone and the crown's already cracked off, so she probably had a resorptive lesion there and her body's just dealing with it. This bump right in front of this tooth, there should be a tooth there. It's quiet, there's no infection in her bone. There isn't really anything there to take out because the body's just absorbed it. Cats are weird. There's nothing to take out there. When the roots look like that, they're like cemented to the jaw. You're not getting them out. Just to clean on this side, and then she'll be done.
And that was my day, at least, or my morning.